You ever have one of those moments where your whole life flips over in the space of a single breath? Yeah, that happened to me. And all it took was a pink blazer wearing HOA president standing in my driveway, her voice dripping with satisfaction as she handed me a letter that would blow up everything I thought I knew about my own home. "We're placing a lien on your house, effective immediately," she said, holding out that letter like it was some kind of gift. I remember my hands on the steering wheel still calloused and rough from 3 months of underwater welding out in the Gulf. Salt in every pore, my mind still halfway beneath the surface. And there she was, Vivian Cartwright, 61, grinning like a cat with a canary. You know what I mean. Let me back up a sec. Offshore work isn't for the faint of heart. 3 months living in a pressure cooker, welding pipeline joints in a diving bell, 12-hour shifts with nothing but the hum of pumps and the hiss of your own breath to keep you company. All that just to come home and find out your life has turned into a legal nightmare because of a boat dock you bought for a single crumpled dollar bill. Yeah, you heard me right, $1. And it wasn't even a good dock. It was 12 barnacle-encrusted posts creaking and groaning with every wave like old bones that should have been buried years ago. But to Vivian, it wasn't about the dock. It was about control, about taking something that didn't belong to her and making it hers by any means necessary. What started as a petty squabble over aesthetics turned into forged signatures, federal crimes, and a courtroom showdown that pulled the rug out from under the entire community. If you're watching this from anywhere with an HOA, buckle up. Comment where you're watching from because trust me, this gets absolutely insane. It was a Monday morning, March 2019. I'd just driven 12 hours straight, body still humming with the leftover exhaustion of a 3-month hitch, dreaming of finally hearing my daughter's voice in person again. I pulled into my driveway and slammed the brakes. Dead center was a 200-pound block of concrete right where my wheels should be, with unauthorized structure violation scrawled in thick, angry red paint across the side. Not just in the way like someone calculated the exact angle to make sure I couldn't dodge left or right. Next to it, like she was unveiling a prize on The Price is Right, stood Vivian, that pink blazer probably worth more than my truck. Payment hair sprayed and styled so hard you'd swear she was about to ask to see my manager from 50 yards out. She looked at that block like it was a trophy. I sat there, engine idling, just breathing for a second, letting it sink in. 3 months offshore, missing my kid, missing my life, and this is what I get. But I didn't honk, didn't roll down the window and yell, didn't do any of the things that'd make me feel better for 10 seconds and worse for a year. I just took out my phone, snapped a picture of the block, the graffiti, her smug little smirk, the works time-stamped for evidence. Because I'd learned long ago sometimes all you got is documentation. Then I stepped out of the truck boots, crunching on the gravel. Vivian greeted me like we were best pals. "Welcome home, Leland. We've sent you 3 warnings about this. You can't say we didn't try to resolve it civilly." That voice, man, honey sweet with a tang of arsenic, the way people sound when they know they're being unreasonable and just don't care. I kept my face neutral. Warnings about what exactly? She jabbed a manicured finger past my house out towards the lake. "That dock, that rotting eyesore you refuse to remove, it's dragging down everyone's property values." I looked where she pointed. The structure in question, 12 posts sticking out of the water deck, warped, sun-bleached barnacles hanging like nature's jewelry. It creaked when the water moved, gaps wide enough to lose your keys through the whole thing, a monument to neglect, smelling like old wood and wet leaves, a whisper of something nature was reclaiming. It was honestly a mess. But it was my mess. "The dock's on my property," I said, slow and careful. "I checked the deed before I bought it." Vivian just laughed, a sharp, humorless sound. "Actually," she said, "the HOA has jurisdiction over any structure that affects community aesthetics. It's in our bylaws." That's when I popped open the passenger door and pulled out my paperwork folder, the one I kept for things exactly like this. The deed, the survey map, and attorney's email. I'd checked it all when I closed on the house 6 months back. That dock was technically a separate parcel, its own tax ID outside the HOA line. County records, black and white. I handed her the survey. She glanced at it like it was covered in something nasty, shoved it back at me. These papers don't mean anything. The HOA has its own rules. Right then I knew. This wasn't about property values or ugly docks. This was about something else, something I didn't see yet, but could feel circling, waiting to pounce. I'll review the CC&Rs again, I said as calm as I could, but if the dock's outside your boundary, you don't have authority. Her smile went from smug to shark. We'll see about that. She left the block where it was climbed into a white Lexus, so knew it probably had more tech than my entire dive setup. I stood there, block of concrete in my driveway, paperwork in hand, and called the only person I knew who wouldn't think I was losing my mind, Knox Rafferty. We'd worked together in Houston before he went off to law school, and now, lucky for me, he specialized in property litigation. Knox, I've got a situation. I walked him through it. The warnings, the dock, the concrete. He listened the way only true friends do without jumping in. When I was done, he said, if it's outside their jurisdiction, they've got no standing, but Leland HOAs don't always care about standing. They escalate. They make your life hell until you move. I looked at that dock honestly. It wasn't much. I'd bought it for $1 as part of the house deal. A weird 1980s thing the previous owner cooked up for tax reasons. Different deed, different taxes. Not part of the HOA's common area. The realtor had summed it up. You're buying this for $1 because nobody else wants to maintain it. I didn't care. I just wanted a place to teach my daughter to kayak. Sloan was 10, living with her mom in Tampa after the divorce. I got her every other weekend so long as I lived within 100 miles. That's why Clearwater worked. Close enough to keep my time with her, close enough to work offshore without breaking the custody agreement. The house, the lake, the dock, all of it was really about her. She even named it. One Saturday, she wobbled down the old plank, said, "Can we call it Sloan's Landing?" We painted a sign together, blue letters, messy as her laugh, and I hung it on the first post. Faded now, but still there. Knox brought me back to the present. You want to fight this or move? It was fair. Fighting the HOA could cost thousands, maybe drag on for years. I could sell, walk away, avoid the hassle. But I kept picturing Sloan asking, why'd we leave? I couldn't look her in the eye and tell her bullies win, because good people get tired. I'm not moving, I told Knox. Then document everything he said, every letter, every email, every conversation. You'll need a paper trail. I thanked him, hung up, walked down to the dock, past the block, stood at the edge where the water lapped. That old dock was about to be a battleground. I just didn't know how bad it'd get. I didn't know Vivian Cartwright had $1-million plans for this exact stretch of shoreline, or that what started as petty harassment would turn into forgery, fraud, and federal crimes. All I knew was I'd bought that dock fair and square for $1, and I wasn't about to let anyone steal it with a gavel and an attitude. The lake was calm that day, water like glass, my reflection wobbly but determined. If Vivian wanted a war, she was going to get one. But I'd fight it right, paper evidence the law. Bullies never expect you to fight back with brains instead of brawn. You want to hear the rest? Trust me, it only gets crazier from here. So that's how it started. Just a chunk of concrete, a pink blazer, and a stubborn streak that runs deep in my bones. But let me take you back a little further so you get why I wasn't willing to walk away from a pile of rotten lumber and a rusty sign with my daughter's name on it. When the divorce papers came through, it was fall of 2017. I was in Houston pulling good money, $140,000 a year, working for a big offshore contractor, the kind of job folks respect from a distance, you know. But in court, none of that mattered. My ex-wife's lawyer handed me the custody agreement 2 weekends a month. That was it. All those missed birthdays, little milestones slipping by while I was 1,000 miles from home, helmet full of stale air and regret. Judge was fair but firm. You're not unreliable, Mr. Pierce, but you're unavailable. Couldn't argue with that. 6 months offshore, 6 months back. I started looking for a way out before the ink was even dry. I took a pay cut, went for the golf contracts, 3 months on 1 month off. It stung, but doubled my time with Sloan. The catch, I had to move within 100 miles of Tampa because that's where my ex's new husband was putting down roots. Finding a house wasn't easy. Most places were either deep in the sticks or one bad hurricane away from losing the roof. Then I found the listing in Clearwater, a boxy little 2-bed 1-bath built in the early 90s. Bland as a saltine, but the backyard sloped straight to the water, and at the edge was that dock. Listing said additional waterfront structure sold separately as is. Realtor explained it. Dock was its own parcel, different deed, different tax ID. Something to do with the way the neighborhood got carved up in the 80s. The seller wanted it gone, liability, maintenance, you name it. He'd sell for $1. I walked out there during the showing, wood moaning under my boots. Every step a creak, like the dock was warning me, buddy, you sure about this? But I pictured Sloan there, fishing rod in hand, sun in her hair, asking about the stars. Kid stuff. I signed the dotted line, $1 for the dock, $280,000 for the house, and just like that, I was within reach of my daughter again. First time I brought Sloan by, she ran to the water. Can we swim? Not until we fix the dock, I told her. But it's ours to paint, patch, rename, whatever you want. Really? Her whole face lit up, and she said, let's call it Sloan's Landing. We spent a Saturday painting a sign together, blue letters, shaky but proud. I hammered it onto the first post. For the first time since the split, I felt like maybe, just maybe, I was getting this dad thing right. Our weekends fell into a rhythm. She'd show up Friday night, backpack bouncing, dolphin plush under her arm. Saturdays, we'd work on the dock, replace a plank here, tighten a bolt there. Sundays, we took the kayaks out, just drifting, listening to her talk about school and friends, all the little details that make life worth living. We didn't have much, but we had each other and this patch of water and wood. Enter the HOA. The first encounter was at one of those mandatory welcome meetings in June 2018. Community center, beige walls, folding chairs, projector, humming with a PowerPoint about neighborhood standards. Vivian ran the meeting like she was born with a gavel in her hand. Lawn height, mailbox shapes, fence colors, you name it. When she asked for questions, I raised my hand. Just want to confirm the dock on my parcel, it's not under HOA jurisdiction, right? You'd think I'd asked her to donate a kidney. She fixed me with this icy stare. And what do you do for work, Mr. Pierce? Underwater welder, I said. Offshore contracts. She sniffed like she was trying to decide if that was beneath her. So, a handyman for boats? I just grinned. Something like that. She went back to her notes. The HOA has authority over all structures visible from the common areas. If we determine your dock is an eyesore, you'll need to address it. Should have been my warning. But I was the new guy, didn't want to ruffle feathers. So I nodded, made a mental note to read every inch of the CC&Rs and kept my head down. Next 6 months, quiet as a graveyard. I worked offshore, came home for Sloan's weekends, fixed up the dock, nothing fancy, just enough so I didn't worry about her falling through. Bought 2 kayaks, bright yellow, her choice. Sometimes we'd paddle out and she'd pepper me with questions. What's it like being underwater? I'd tell her quiet, dark, peaceful, in a way most folks will never understand. February 2019. I get my first letter. Certified mail waiting for me after a 3-month hitch. Formal as a funeral HOA letterhead. Vivian's signature. Dear Mr. Pierce, your boat dock violates community aesthetic standards. I read it 3 times. They cited Section 7.3 of our CC&Rs, told me I had 30 days to remove or renovate the dock or face daily fines. I double-checked my deed. The survey map even sent them copies showing the dock was outside their boundary. Sent a polite email. I believe there's been a misunderstanding. See attached documents. No reply. Instead, I came home to that concrete block in March. But here's what I didn't know until later. My neighbor, Porter Henley, oldtimer 71, been here since before the HOA was a twinkle in anyone's eye, stopped by one April evening with a 6-pack and a story. You need to know about Vivian, he said, settling into a patio chair like a man settling in for a thunderstorm. Back in 2010, she tried to buy that dock. offered the old owner 12 grand. He turned her down, said she was too pushy. She wanted a private Marina charge slip fees, make money for the HOA. I blinked. Why didn't he sell? Porter shrugged. Didn't like her. She's driven 3 families out in the last 5 years, uses the rules like a hammer, finds them, hounds them, makes life miserable until they sell. He looked me in the eye. You want to fight? Know who you're up against? She doesn't quit. I thought about selling, about taking Sloan somewhere no one could touch us. But then I'd look at that sign, Sloan's Landing. Only thing we had that was truly ours. I wasn't rich, didn't have a fancy car, but I had that dock. I made up my mind on the back porch that night, moon reflecting off the lake. If she wanted it, she'd have to come and take it. But I wasn't going anywhere, and I'd learned every rule better than she did. Not because I liked to fight, but because I knew what it felt like to lose something precious, and I wasn't about to do it again. Then came the second letter late March, 5 days after the concrete. This time, it wasn't a warning, it was a bill. $50 a day, retroactive to the first letter in February. 30 days won $500 just for owning what was legally mine. I called the HOA office, got their secretary voice, like she dealt with this 1,000 times. You need to file a formal appeal. Board meets the first Thursday of every month, so that's what I did. April 15th. I showed up at the community center folder, thick with every document I owned, original deed, survey map photos, Florida statutes, highlighted a letter from my real estate attorney confirming the dock was outside HOA reach. Board sat at a folding table, Vivian in the center, vice president, some commercial broker, and a treasurer who barely looked up. I laid it all out, calm, factual, just evidence. When I finished, Vivian gave that tight-lipped smile. Thank you, Mr. Pierce. We'll take this under advisement. No questions, no debate, just dismissal. 5 days later, I got an email unanimous vote. Remove the dock by May 1st or face continued daily fines. No explanation, no legal justification. Just, we said so. I replied immediately, attach the documents again. Please provide the legal basis under Florida Statute 720. The dock is not within your jurisdiction. No response. Instead, a week later, a new letter, CC&Rs update, all waterfront structures must comply with 2019 marine safety codes retroactively. That word retroactive set my teeth on edge. The law's clear. You can't punish someone today for breaking a rule you made up yesterday. Ex post facto right. But Vivian didn't care. I started keeping a log. Every email, every call scanned and saved timestamps. Offshore, I'd forward everything to my lawyer and to myself. It was second nature after years in the oil patch document or die. Meanwhile, the fines piled up. $50 a day became $100. By early May, their math said I owed $9,000. I didn't pay a cent. But the pressure? Every trip to the mailbox, another threat. Every trip to the store, another notice taped to the door. Neighbors started whispering, some sympathetic, some avoiding me entirely. Vivian was posting dock pictures on social media, riling everyone up about community standards. She never used my name, but everybody knew. One Saturday, Sloan caught a glimpse of one of those posts. Dad, why are people saying mean things about our dock? I had no good answer. I just told her, some people want things they can't have. We're not doing anything wrong and we're not giving up. Knox called mid-May. Time to get serious. Send a cease and desist, make it formal. Let them know you'll sue for harassment. He drafted a letter, no wiggle room. Your actions are harassment. The dock is outside your jurisdiction. Continue, and we'll pursue legal remedies. Sent it certified mail. Vivian signed for it on May 20th. 3 days later, the daily fine jumped to $150. That's when I knew logic wasn't going to fix this. This was going to get ugly before it got better. So I did what any stubborn fool with something to lose would do. I dug in. Before heading back offshore for another 3-month hitch, I made one last investment cameras. 4 weatherproof disguised as outdoor lights, 2 pointed at the dock, 1 at my front door, 1 covering the backyard, all sending video straight to the cloud and pinging my phone whenever anything moved. I figured if they wanted to play dirty, I'd at least have proof. Sure enough, on May 26th, 3 days after that fine jumped, I'm on the platform suiting up for a dive when my phone buzzes. Motion at rear camera. I tap in and see Vivian pink blazer swapped for something a little more covert and the HOA vice president plus a stranger in a marine survey vest. They march right past my no trespassing signs straight down to the dock. The surveyor's taking measurements, snapping photos, making notes, while Vivian points out planks and posts, waving her hands like she owns the place. I'm watching all this in real time, 12,000 miles away, pressure building in my chest. But I don't call the cops. Not yet. I save the video, file it away. 20 minutes later, they're gone. Next week, a certified letter arrives on the rig official inspection report from a licensed marine surveyor named Clifford Dunham. It says my dock is structurally unsound, violates Florida code, must be demolished immediately to prevent public safety hazards. Now, I'm not stupid. I checked Dunham's credentials. He's legit. But his background, big commercial stuff, ports cargo docks, not tiny residential boat slips. And anyway, he's got no legal authority to demand anything on my property. So I call him from the satellite phone. Took a couple tries to get through, but when he picked up, I introduced myself, explained the situation, asked if he realized the dock wasn't HOA property, wasn't under their control. He hesitated, then said, "They told me it was a community structure." I corrected him firmly but politely. "Filing a false inspection report can cost you your license. I've got documentation proving it's private and structurally sound. If you move forward with this, I'll file a complaint." Another long pause. Finally, he says he'll review and withdraw any demolition recommendation in writing. 2 days later, he does exactly that. I print the email, tuck it in the folder. But that didn't stop Vivian. On June 2nd, almost midnight, my cameras pick up 2 figures at the dock. Dark clothes, hats pulled low. I'm watching from my bunk offshore, helpless as they whip out a battery saw and cut through 2 support posts. The dock sags, leaning like a drunk. Not harassment anymore, this is vandalism. I call the local sheriff, email the footage. A deputy comes out next morning, takes photos, writes up a report, asks if I have suspects. I tell him I have suspicions. Video shows the act, but not faces. But then I check the driveway camera from that night, 11:17 p.m., 28 minutes before the saw comes out. A car parks with the lights off. Not clear enough for a plate, but I recognize the make and model. I send the video to Porter, my neighbor. Calls me back, says, "That's the vice president's car. Same one he drives to every board meeting. More evidence for the pile, circumstantial maybe, but stacking up." Then on June 10th, a letter from the county clerk's office lands in my mailbox. Official envelope makes my stomach clench before I even open it. Property deed update notification. Inside is a copy of a quit-claim deed transferring ownership of the dock from me to the HOA common area with my signature at the bottom. Only, I never signed it. I was offshore, remember. The notary stamp belonged to Sandra Martinez, license expired 2 years ago, matched to an address for Vivian's old real estate office. That was the moment I realized I wasn't just dealing with rule bullies. This was felony territory now. Identity theft, forgery, notary fraud, all under Florida Statute 117. I filed 3 complaints that day. County clerk to reverse the fraudulent deed. Florida Notary Division for illegal notarization, Sheriff's Office for identity theft and forgery. For the first time since this mess started, I felt like someone in power might actually be listening. But Vivian wasn't done. On June 15th, I woke up to a stack of voicemails, electricity cut off, water service terminated. Both companies said the account holder, the HOA, had requested disconnection for unpaid fees. Never mind, my accounts were up to date, paid from my bank automatically. Their reps were sympathetic, but policy is policy. Until I could prove otherwise in person, my house was dark and dry while I was still offshore. Had to pay a local to drive down with my lease, my ID account statements. Cost me $450 in hotel fees and 3 days of spoiled groceries and mold growing in the bathroom. Just pure vindictive nonsense. And it still didn't stop. Next, I get an invoice, Clearwater Marine Services, $15,000 for emergency dock repairs. Only problem, no such company exists. Florida Business Registry, nothing. The P.O. box listed as the return address, registered to the HOA vice president. They created a fake company, billed me for fake work, and tried to stick me with the bill. This isn't just HOA overreach anymore, this is mail fraud. That's a federal offense. 20 years if you're convicted. So I call Knox, then I call the FBI. Tampa field office. Agent Kowalski answers, professional, no nonsense. I lay out the story, send over every scrap of evidence, every video, every document. She tells me, this isn't just harassment, Mr. Pierce. This is a federal case. We'll also investigate possible RICO violations if there's a pattern of systematic fraud. I remember sitting at the kitchen table, surrounded by folders and flash drives, feeling the weight of it all. 3 families pushed out. In 5 years, my neighbor's stories, the rising stack of evidence. Maybe I was just the first one stubborn enough to stay and fight. Agent Kowalski says, if they contact you, try to get it on record, audio, video, whatever you can. We need them to incriminate themselves. I nodded. I was ready. Nodded. The HOA called an emergency meeting July 1st, 7:00 p.m. Foreclosure proceedings on my house for unpaid fees. Under their rules, they'd need a 75% vote from residents. Vivian must have thought she had it in the bag. But I'd be there. I came early, arms full, laptop projector folder, stuffed with evidence, ready to fight fire with fire. I got to the community center 15 minutes before the meeting started, feeling that familiar cocktail of anger and adrenaline bubbling in my chest. The parking lot was jammed. Word must have spread because neighbors who'd never even looked my way before were showing up with folding chairs and curious eyes, ready to watch whatever drama was about to unfold. Some folks brought their kids like it was movie night or something. There was this tension in the air you could almost taste, like right before a summer storm. Vivian was already at the front, her usual command center set up, legal pads, neat stack of files, that pink blazer standing out like a warning sign. When she saw me hauling in the projector, her jaw tightened just a bit, but she held on to her professional smile. The rest of the board sat beside her, trying to look important. Vice President, the guy whose car I'd spotted at my house the night the dock got cut, and the treasurer who looked like she'd rather be anywhere else. Vivian called the meeting to order at exactly 7:00 p.m., wrapped her gavel, and ran through a couple of motions no one cared about. Then she cleared her throat and said, we're here to vote on foreclosure proceedings against the property at Lakeshore Drive. Mr. Pierce has accumulated over $12,000 in unpaid fines and has refused all attempts at resolution. Before we vote, I'll allow him to make a statement if he wishes. I stood up, heart-pounding folder in one hand, remote for the projector in the other. I appreciate the chance to speak, I said, my voice steady, even though my palms were sweating, and I think everyone here deserves to know exactly what's been going on before you vote on something that could cost a neighbor their home. I plugged in the laptop, pulled up the first slide, the deed for the dock, clear as day, dated 1987, showing it as a separate parcel with its own tax ID. This document, I said, proves I own the dock. Not the HOA, never has been. Click to the next slide, survey map with boundaries drawn in bold red. Here's the county map. HOA jurisdiction ends here. My dock is here outside the boundary by 40 feet. I could see people in the crowd leaning forward, squinting at the wall, whispering to each other. For the first time, they weren't just listening, they were paying attention. Vivian's lips pressed into a thin line. Now I said, let me show you what happened when I tried to resolve this dispute legally. Next slide. The forged quitclaim deed blown up on the screen. This document was filed with the county in my name, supposedly transferring the dock to HOA ownership. Except I never signed it. I was offshore when this was allegedly notarized. I zoomed in on the notary stamp. Sandra Martinez license, expired in 2017. This notary wasn't even authorized to sign anything. Room went quiet. Clicked again, video footage this time. 3 people. Vivian, the vice president, and the surveyor walking onto my property, clear as day, time-stamped, no attempt to hide it. This is trespassing. May 26th. Unauthorized inspection of private property. 30 seconds of uncomfortable silence while the video played. Then the fake invoice, Clearwater Marine Services, $15,000 for imaginary work P.O. Box, linked to the vice president. No such company exists. This is mail fraud, a federal crime. Let that hang for a moment. Then my final card, the audio recording from the previous emergency board meeting, Vivian's voice piping through the speakers. That dock is worth far more than he realizes. If he knew what we had planned, he'd sell it to us for nothing. We have a $4 million Marina development ready to go. He's standing in the way of progress. The reaction was instant: whispers, gasps, people turning to look at Vivian, who stood up, face pale, voice shaking. That recording was illegal. It's not admissible. I shook my head. Florida law allows recording in public spaces, and this community center is public. Admissibility isn't the issue because this isn't court. It's about the truth. I advanced to the last slide: letters from the FBI, the county sheriff, the state notary division. Federal investigation, notary fraud, vandalism, mail fraud, all of it's real, and every agency you see here has the evidence. I turned to face everyone. Before you vote on foreclosure, ask yourselves how many of you have paid arbitrary fines, how many felt forced to sell, how many wondered if the rules really applied to everyone or just to the folks. Vivian wanted out. For a second, nobody said a word. Then a woman stood up in the third row, gray hair, watery eyes. Vivian fined me $8,000 for repainting my house the wrong shade of beige. I had to take out a loan. A guy near the back added. She forced us out in 2017, said our fence was too high. We lost money selling just to get out from under the fees. It snowballed, neighbors standing up telling their stories one after another. You could feel the mood shift, like folks were waking up from a long sleep. When the dust settled, I moved to remove the entire board for conflict of interest and abuse of authority. The vote wasn't even close: 68 in favor, 4 opposed. Vivian, the vice president, and the treasurer were out, effective immediately. Foreclosure never happened. 3 days later, the county clerk reversed the fraudulent deed. Notary division filed charges against Vivian. Sheriff arrested the vice president for criminal mischief and trespassing. FBI expanded their investigation to cover 8 years of HOA activity. Justice wasn't fast, but it was coming step by step. Come September 2019, I filed a civil lawsuit suing the HOA Vivian and the vice president for trespassing, harassment, fraud, defamation, and emotional distress. $500,000 in actual and punitive damages. Knox warned me civil trials move slow. You'll be in for the long haul. He was right, but I was ready. When the trial date finally rolled around, it was almost a year since the night I watched 2 shadows cut my dock apart on grainy cloud footage from 1,000 miles offshore. The courthouse smelled like stale coffee and old paper. I remember sitting on those cold benches, folder in my lap, heart pounding, as the bailiff called the room to order. It felt like everything: the sleepless nights, the worry, the calls to the sheriff and the FBI, the time stolen from my daughter had led to this moment. Yeah, I was nervous, but I was ready to see this through. The HOA had brought in a lawyer, silver-haired, smooth as butter, 30 years of defending boards from disgruntled homeowners. His opening argument was almost comical. The HOA acted within its authority, Your Honor, to preserve community standards. Mr. Pierce refused to comply. His dock was a safety hazard, like it was all just about a pile of wood and nails. Knox stood calm as ever, not a hint of drama in his voice. The dock in question sits on a private parcel deeded separately since 1987. The HOA has no jurisdiction. What they do have is a documented pattern of harassment, forgery, and fraud. We intend to prove that today. His confidence calmed me a little anyway. First witness up, the structural engineer I'd hired back in May. A woman with 20 years on marine builds voice, like she'd been through more storms than the judge and the HOA combined. I inspected the structure personally. It was safe for recreational use. Routine maintenance needed, sure, but no immediate danger. The HOA's report was inaccurate. The HOA's lawyer tried to shake her. Are you sure she didn't blink? I'd stake my license. I could see the jury nodding. Then my neighbor Porter took the stand. You could tell he was nervous, hands trembling, voice a little thin, but his memory was sharp. Saw the vice president's car at 11:17 p.m. right outside Leland's place. 25 minutes later, heard power tools. Next morning, the dock was cut. The defense pressed him. Did you see who did it? He just shook his head. Heard the saw the car. I know what I know. That stuck with folks. No. Next came the video evidence. Knox set up the projector, played it for the jury. Vivian, the VP, the surveyor trespassing. Then the grainy night footage, 2 figures in the dark battery, saw buzzing dock wobbling. Then the car by my driveway. Images don't lie. The room was dead quiet. We brought in a handwriting expert who'd analyzed the forged quitclaim deed. The signature is inconsistent with Mr. Pierce's authentic writing. The formation is hesitant, not fluid, classic signs of forgery. You could practically feel the oxygen leaving the defense table. Then the FBI Agent Kowalski subpoenaed to explain the federal side. She testified to the mail fraud complaint, the pattern of HOA harassment, the mounting evidence of RICO violations, 11 families in 8 years, forced sales properties snapped up by board members or their friends, estimated damages of $800,000. We're pursuing criminal charges under federal racketeering statutes. There was an audible gasp. You could see some of the jurors' jaws actually drop. Finally, Vivian took the stand. Her lawyer tossed her softballs. Did you intend harm? Did you act in good faith? Did you believe you had authority? Vivian answered. No. Yes. Absolutely respectively. Voice trembling but defiant. Knox's cross-examination was a thing of beauty. He played the audio. That dock is worth far more than he realizes. $4 million, Marina. Then he laid out printed emails. Once we acquire the dock, we proceed with development revenue projections attached. He handed copies to the jury. You weren't protecting the community. You were trying to seize private property for profit. Isn't that right? Vivian's voice broke. That's not... those were possibilities. Knox leaned in. You forged documents. You vandalized. You lied. You did all this for a dock you thought was worthless until it wasn't. She couldn't answer. The jury didn't need much time, 3 hours. Their verdict, the HOA owed me $250,000, Vivian personally, $100,000. The VP another $100,000. The judge tacked on a public apology in the community newsletter and permanently barred both Vivian and the VP from serving on any HOA in the state. Outside local news had caught wind of it. Small homeowner defeats corrupt HOA, that was the headline. David versus Goliath, but with legal briefs instead of slingshots. I did a quick interview. I didn't fight for the money, I said. I fought because my daughter needed to see you don't roll over when someone tries to take what's yours. I meant every word. Within 2 weeks, Vivian and the vice president had their homes up for sale. Neighbors who'd once looked the other way now crossed the street to avoid them. The new board elected, after the dust settled, was all fresh faces folks who actually wanted to serve, not control. Justice wasn't quick, it wasn't painless, but it was real. I stood out on that dock one chilly November morning, 3 months after the verdict, hammer in hand, new lumber ready. 12 posts, all still standing. The deck was solid again, better than ever. Sloan's sign, the blue paint faded, but still legible, Sloan's Landing. That day she was coming by, and I'd promised her a trip on the kayaks, just us like old times. But even with the dust settling, my mind was spinning, thinking about what came next. Not defense anymore, but possibility. So there I was standing on the dock. Well, our dock, let's be real. Watching the ripples stretch out under a sky as blue as Sloan's sign. Thinking about everything that had happened. You'd think after a mess like that, A guy would want to just lock the gates, plant some flowers, and never let another soul near his property again. But something in me had shifted. All those months defending a pile of old wood, it changed the way I saw what was possible. After the trial, after the checks cleared, I sat down with Knox over greasy diner burgers and endless refills of coffee. We talked about the future, about what to do with the dock. You know, Vivian wasn't wrong about the value, he said, half a smile curling up. Deep water access channel to the bay, nothing like it for miles. You could turn this into something big. At first I laughed. I mean, it felt like tempting fate, why poke the bear again? But the more I looked at the numbers, the more it made sense. I started researching, talking to developers, reading up on marinas, running every calculation twice. It turned out a real marina with 20 slips could pull in $15,000 a month in rental fees easy. My stomach did a slow somersault the first time I saw that number. All this because of a $1 dock that everyone else wanted gone. I met Archer, a developer with a track record and a steady handshake. We sat at a coffee shop near the bay, legal pads scattered between us. I showed him the surveys, the legal docs, the deep water readings. He looked it all over, nodding eyes sharp. "It's solid," he said. "You put up $500,000, I'll match you with $1.5 million. We build a marina, 20 slips, revenue split, 60-40 in your favor. I handle the heavy lifting, you keep the land in the name." I almost laughed. "There's one condition, it's called Sloan's Landing. That sign stays." Archer grinned. "Deal." Breaking ground in December felt surreal. I'd spent so long patching rotten planks and fighting off lawsuits, I never pictured a parade of contractors and heavy equipment out there, neighbors coming by to watch or in some cases offer an awkward apology for staying silent before. Porter, the old union guy, showed up with a notebook full of sketches offering advice on everything from the dock angle to which kind of cleats would last longest in brackish water. Some folks pitched in with marketing ideas, some helped grease the wheels with city permitting. It felt like the whole neighborhood wanted to make up for the years they'd let Vivian run wild. By July, just like Archer promised, Sloan's Landing, Marina was open for business, 20 slips, everyone rented within 2 weeks. First month, the revenue report came in $15,000 right on the nose. I hired a marina manager, let him handle the day-to-day. I wasn't giving up underwater welding. There's a peace in the deep that nothing on land can replace. But now, for the first time, I had something solid to build on. College fund for Sloan, a little cushion, security I'd never had growing up one step ahead of overdue bills. By the end of 2020, a professional appraiser put the value of the property at $2.8 million. 2 years later, that number climbed to $4 million, even with the economy wobbling. All because I refused to let someone steal a rotten dock for nothing. I'd be lying if I said it didn't feel a little poetic when in September I got an email from the new HOA board, fresh faces, no pink blazers in sight. They wanted to discuss a partnership, even floated an offer $3.5 million for Sloan's Landing Marina full ownership. We believe it could serve as a valuable community asset. I stared at the screen, then picked up the phone, called Knox. He snorted. "Poetic justice, huh? What are you going to tell them?" I sat with that question for a while, remembered the sleepless nights, the ruined groceries, the panic attacks, Sloan's worried questions, the sign she painted herself. In the end, I wrote back, polite as could be. "Thank you, but Sloan's Landing isn't for sale." It was never about the money, not really. It was about standing up for what's right, about showing my daughter that dignity doesn't have a price tag and some things are worth fighting for, even when it would be easier to just walk away. Meanwhile, the criminal cases made their way through the courts. Vivian got 2 years probation, 200 hours of community service, a $10,000 fine. Her name was Mud. She moved out of state 6 months later, never looked back. The vice president was convicted of fraud and vandalism, 18 months suspended to probation, lost his broker's license, sold his house at a loss, skipped town. The HOA as an entity got hit with a $50,000 state fine, ordered to bring in outside management and submit to annual audits. Folks stopped whispering at the mailbox. Some even thanked me quietly for sticking it out. I could tell when I walked down to the dock in the evening that the air had changed lighter, easier. Justice hadn't been quick, but it had arrived. One bright Saturday in 2021, I brought Sloane down to the Marina. She was 12 now, a head taller, sharp as a tack. We walked out on the dock together, past boats bobbing in their slips, families loading up coolers for a day on the water. She stopped at the first post, her old sign faded blue still hanging right next to the new professional marina sign. "Dad," she said, voice a little awed. I can't believe this used to be that old broken dock. I put my arm around her shoulders. "You know what I learned through all this?" She looked up, waiting. Sometimes the things everybody else thinks are worthless, those are the things you've got to fight for. They're treasure if you're willing to stick it out. She smiled at me, brighter than any sunrise I'd ever seen. "Is that why you kept my sign?" I nodded. "That sign is worth more than this whole marina, kiddo, because it reminds me what matters." We stood there for a long time, just breathing in the quiet, the gentle slap of water on pilings, the sound of new beginnings. My phone buzzed, another slip rental, another month's income on a property everyone wanted to bulldoze. And you know what? Sometimes I do think about Vivian, wonder if she ever drives by, sees what her little ward created. The truth is, if she'd left me alone, I'd probably have let that dock rot and sink, just some broken memory of better days. Instead, her push made me fight, and fighting made me see the value nobody else could. The $4 million marina exists because she tried to steal a $1 dock. That's the thing about bullies. They think if they push hard enough, you'll break. But sometimes you just dig in deeper and you find out you're stronger than you ever knew. I looked at Sloane, at the water, at the whole new life we'd built, one hard battle at a time. "Come on," I said. "Let's take the kayaks out." She grinned just like she did the first time we came here, and off we went, paddles slicing through water, clear as a mirror sun, warm on our backs. And for the first time in a long, long time, I felt peaceful, not just because I'd won, but because I'd done it the right way, fair and square. Because my daughter got to see what real grit looks like, what it means to fight for something not just for yourself, but for the future. You know what I mean?